yes. So yeah. Lights on. Yes, that's the look to have. So yeah, I'm honored to moderate actually this panel around imagining future. Imagining future is a network of festival directors, of artists, curators that was born during COVID-19, and where all these persons took advantage of the global break to rethink Europe's independent festival landscape and to dream of alternative modes of operations and ethic within festivals. I invite you also to read their document or to listen to it, because there is the audio version. You can find it in the frequencies page, I think. Yeah. So yeah, and the document actually synthesizes all their discussions, inspirations, and provocations. And yeah, and speaking of inspirations and provocation, I would like to read some of their what if. Their what if are questions you will find all along the document that opens new possible ways of thinking festivals. So I will read some of them who inspired me personally. So the first one is, what if artists performing at this year's festival curated next year's festival? What if festivals didn't happen every year, but when there was enough to be said? What if programming a show for just one performance were forbidden? Because actually it's very frustrating. And what if there were no more tote bag? Actually, I internalized that much this what if, that yesterday in the opening when I was offered a tote bag, I was like, no. Yeah. I didn't know why, but I was no. And today I was offered also a tote bag. And I said yes. So it was only a one-day resolution. So yeah, you will find a lot of other what if in the document that might inspire you too, that are questioning important matters like care, power dynamics within festivals, alternative ways of creating, presenting, and building networks. So yeah, I will not spoil more the document and your work, and I will now introduce you. We have with us Amy Letman, the creative director of Transform Festival, that aims to shift perceptions of what theater could look like and represent in the Leeds City region, which is in the north of England. Transform brings bold, brave, vivid, and socially conscious international performance to the Leeds City region and beyond. Hi, Amy. We have also Anna Mülter in the other side, who is the artistic director of Festival Theaterformen, that presents international contemporary theater since 1990. 1990, right, yeah. Between Hanover and Braunschweig, which is in the north of Germany. There's a lot of north here. So Theaterformen debates socio-political themes in new performative forms in close consultation with the city and its residents. And as the network is also composed by artists, we have here Angela Alves, a Berlin-based choreographer interested in the relationship between health, equality, and sustainability. She translates different practices of self-care into performative formats and question perceptions of healthy and sick. We have also Claire Lefèvre, who is a feminist choreographer, performer, and writer currently working in Vienna. She likes to think of herself as a host, welcoming collaborators and audience members into kitsch landscapes where politics and poetics are gently interwoven. She's currently exploring the idea of becoming a performance doula, which I found very interesting, a role imagined to disinvisibilize care work in the cultural field. We will surely talk more about care in our discussion, as it's also a main subject in your network. So I would like to start with the beginning and ask Amy about if you can tell us a little bit about some backstage infos, how this network starts, and yeah, how was the process of everything.
Great, thank you. Hi everyone, thanks so much for coming to hear us have this conversation today. So yeah, I'll talk a little bit about the origins of this network. And also I just wanted to say, sorry, my pronouns are she, her, I didn't say that. And in case a visual description is useful for anyone here or online, I'm a woman with black hair and olive skin wearing a dark blue top, and I've got a pair of sunglasses on my head. So yeah, I'll talk a little bit about where the project started. So it came from a conversation between myself and Francis and Katrin from the Goethe-Institut in London. So I remember it was the sort of depths of lockdown, and I was in my garden having a break from writing kind of incessant emergency funding applications. And I had a phone call with Francis, who I'd known for a while, used to work at London International Festival of Theatre, and had recently started with the Goethe-Institut in London. And we were talking about the independent festival scene in that moment, sort of what I was grappling with and struggling with, and some of the ideas or different formats that I'd kind of personally started to think about for the festival that I run, Transform. It feels like it was that kind of very heady moment in the earlier part of the pandemic where we were all kind of asking what if, and it felt like there was a real sense of I guess a desire sort of not to return to business as usual and to think differently about our projects and programs and what they could be and look like. And it felt like at the Goethe-Institut in London, they were having a similar kind of what if moment, and also really thinking, the project was funded by UNIC, which is a consortium of cultural embassies. And that group of people during the pandemic were kind of also asking, how can we be useful at this time? How can we create space and resources for the cultural sector? And that's sort of where it came from. It was about creating a space for independent festivals across Europe to spend some time asking what if, and to grapple and interrogate this kind of extraordinary and bizarre moment in history that we all found ourselves in, and essentially to kind of support each other as we replanned, reorganized, rethought. And that's sort of how it started. And I guess it became initially this kind of online space for a bunch of people, mainly women, all running different kind of independent performing arts festivals across Europe, just sort of grappling with stuff together. So do you want to maybe add to that, Anna? Because then you came in as one of the festival directors, right?
Yeah, exactly. Hello, I'm Anna Mülter, and I'm a white woman with short brown hair, turning grey, and a colorful orange t-shirt. I got an invitation from Francis and Amy to join this network, and what I found especially intriguing was the selection you had made of festivals that you had approached all over Europe. Of course, because it's a network based in UK, so there was a lot of UK partners, but also a lot all over Europe. And the selection of the festivals, they were all festivals that I think you considered and as festivals who are trying to push boundaries, who are trying to work differently, and to experiment also with the format of the festival. And this is, of course, something that I'm also interested in with the festival Theaterformen, which I then at that moment actually had just taken over and had not yet made my first edition, which since has happened. And it was, like you said, the special moment where we were in the pandemic, and that meant for basically 2 years with little gaps in between that we were not able to have the kind of conversations with our colleague curators and also with artists in the way that we would have regularly when we meet each other in festivals and hang out over some days. And so I really appreciated this as an organized form of an opportunity to have these conversations and then to go really beyond in these conversations, but actually meet regularly, work on certain questions, give ourselves assignments and topics for the next meetings. And we were really also lucky with the way that the structure from the Goethe-Institut and you and Maddie actually kept all the strings together, which also in the end fed this amazing public publication. Where when I look at it now, we were all in the conversations, but we're like, wow, that's what we all talked about. But so I have to say, I had in these meetings some of the most valuable conversations among colleagues during that time.
Yeah, and I think it's just worth saying, so Anna mentioned Maddie, so Maddie Costa, who is a London-based writer, artist and dramaturg, and who, was kind of there to listen and help us make sense of the conversations we were having, and then did this incredible job of pulling together all of our kind of what felt like quite unwieldy conversations and formulating them into this document, which is also available as an audio version on the Frequencies website and on the UNIC website as well. And I guess there wasn't really a formalized process of selecting the festivals, apart from, like Anna said, we were, lots of us with really different kinds of organizations as well. So whether it's like Theaterforum that's been going for since the 90s, or Submerge Festival in Manchester, which started a few years ago, we were kind of, I think what we shared between us was a desire to think differently in that moment, in particular, about what a festival can look and feel like.
And I would like to hear also from Claire and Angela, since you joined after the network. How was it for you, this collaborative experience also with the institution as an artist?
I would love to start. I think for me what was really special about this project is that it's very rare that artists and festival directors are actually in the same room, and like not in a business meeting or not in a rush or not in this like after premiere, jolly kind of vibe, but to just actually have, time to sit together and think and of course, it's great that artists were involved in imagining festivals of the future, because it also concerns us very much. So this felt very precious to actually have time to all, to also not just see the institution as kind of some kind of faceless organization, but realizing that it's actually run by people who also have needs and desires and wishes and imagination, and to be able to share maybe like more like of our artistic tools, or this kind of innovation that's always demanded of us as makers, and to kind of mirror that towards the structures that we create into. Because I feel like a lot of the time, in my experience, it doesn't matter how much care and gentleness I put in my process. The moment that we are in the theater, there's deadlines, there is so many other people involved, and there's schedules, and then there's always this clash of between our processes and the structures we make into. So this was really special to have this moment to really meet in the middle and be able to really confront our realities.
My name is Angela Alves. My pronouns are she, her. I'm wearing a red shirt. I do have blonde hair, pale skin, and I have been participating in this project in a different way than Claire, because there has been a wonderful residency at a place in France, in PAF, where the artists were invited to spend time together with some of the festival leaders. And I have not been there, but I have been participating digitally. So my experience is a bit. I've never thought about it the way I have to do it now, because when I can imagine how it felt for you being in PAF, the wonderful PAF. I love this place. And, you know, just sitting around in these wonderful rooms and share your dinner in the kitchen, cooking together, having these, you know, talks in a everyday life space, which is very different from sharing conversations in Zoom meetings. But, but I have been... there has been a very special energy in these Zoom meetings, and I don't know. I think we talked about it once, that there is this very feminine energy in the space, and there has been a lot of listening. And this is what I felt was very special in these conversations, that there has been no rush. I have been feeling encouraged to speak, even if, you know, English is not my native language. It's always a little bit, you know, stress. It's causing me stress. Also, these spaces, also here, sitting here, which is a different thing. But, you know, being there together with all these people that you don't know, and then, you know, share about your things. Sitting in your living room is can be different, but this group somehow has had a very encouraging, dynamic, and warm welcome. And yeah, yes, I think this has been. Because there have been some keywords like care and transparency and accountability that we talked about a lot. And for me, somehow in a performative way, I felt these spaces of conversation driven by these thoughts. Yeah, we never talked about that. Yes, I felt comfortable talking.
And I guess it's probably worth saying for anybody that hasn't, I'm imagining most people maybe haven't read the document, our kind of epic documentation of this process, but when we started, we imagined that the festival leaders would meet, spend some time together, and then I guess in what feels like quite a traditional model now looking back, that we would come together, commission some artists to make some work, and then it felt really obvious, like the deeper we got into our conversation, that there were voices missing, which was essentially the voices of the artists. I mean, at one point it felt like the audience could have been present as well, but I think we sort of pivoted and decided that rather than asking artists to kind of produce, a lot of our conversations became about how you might produce relationships over goods, and rather than asking artists to kind of produce a product, might we just ask artists if they were up for joining us in our conversations.
Yeah. No, I just think it's so nice to hear about this and to talk about your original plans, which is a transparent move. And I really enjoyed this. It does a lot to a space, to a shared space.
I guess there was like complexities involved in that as well, because what we also changed over time was the timescales of the project. So I think when we came together, we had a kind of a few months where we sort of thought, okay, we'll have all of our conversations over this time. But actually, when we all got into the room on Zoom, it just felt too demanding, and we were all kind of carrying so much. People were kind of mid-festival or mid kind of just, working out how to kind of keep their organizations afloat. And we really wanted to resist that kind of age-old trope of, having to react quickly and work quickly. So we decided, as the group of festivals, to allow more time for our conversations, which was brilliant for us. But I think inevitably, by the time we got to the point of making the invitation to artists to join, the timescales were really tight. Which was, again, we talk about this in the paper quite a bit, but this idea of sometimes when you create, when you look to create something that's more accessible for one person or one group, it can then have a knock-on effect and be less accessible for others. So I guess it was, just being really transparent about what worked and what didn't. We probably could have had more time, and maybe should have, and if we did it again, I think we'd want to probably extend those timescales further.
I like the fact that you are talking about a lot of things for the first time since since your reunion. So it makes it an important moment for you too. So and now thank you for reminding me to do the visual description. So my pronouns are she, her. I'm a white passing woman with blonde and black hair, and my shirt is blonde and yellow and black too. So in your document, now it's kind of a critical question. In your document, you are also very self-conscious about a characteristic of this network, which is the overwhelming white majority of the collaboration. I wanted to ask maybe why, and is it something that you are thinking in the future to reshape or to question again? I don't know who wants to go for this.
Yeah, I could go. Sorry, I feel like I'm talking loads. I'll stop in a minute. Yes, I think we were self-conscious about the makeup of the group. I think we definitely acknowledged the positivity of the fact that it was a female-dominated cohort. And actually, a kind of another inspiration point from this project came from a Creative Europe project that Transform has been running, called Festivals of the Future, which is focused on supporting founder female-led festivals. So I think there was a real desire when putting together this cohort to kind of make sure that female festival leaders were really strongly represented. And although, people brought their own diversity in many different ways, the majority of the festival leader group, it was a majority kind of white cohort. And I think that was just something that we chose to embrace the conversation of sort of why that was. And why, on the whole, the festival, festival leadership as a whole is not as diverse as it certainly should be, particularly in relation to race and also disability. I think it was about us being aware of that, questioning that, being aware of our own privilege kind of in that space, but also within our own structures that we hold. And I think the process of inviting artists to be part of the conversation was also about making sure that there were a broader range of voices in that conversation. It feels like there's more work to do in terms of how this project might move forward. We're not quite sure of the next steps, but I think certainly, and I think we hope the work will be able to continue this work in some way, that looking in particular at how to create better representation across a network is really important, but also that consideration in terms of our own structures. So something we focused on a lot was how you might, I guess, ensure that others, whether that's particular communities or artists or, have agency kind of in a festival structure, recognizing your own power, and how to ensure that a festival might be owned, shaped, and kind of continued by a sort of broader, more diverse range of voices. I don't know if you want to add to that, Anna, in terms of your own perspective, but yeah.
Yeah, I think we talked a lot about power relations in these structures in many ways. So between also the different, as you already mentioned, that the festivals were of very different scale and resources, and either had secure funding or were really also precarious. But then also the power dynamics between curators and artists. And the relations with the audience, and how I think we discussed a lot how we can open up our kind of curatorial needle hole and our curatorial power and share that more. You also have a project that I'm sure you're going to tell us also about how you do this with young people who you bring into the curatorial process. And at Theaterformen, I also have some forms of giving certain parts over to artists to curate their own pockets of program inside the bigger framework. But when I also think we should acknowledge that artistic work and curatorial work are different things, and we have chosen these positions or these activities or these professions for reasons that there's different knowledge and practice and skills and attention involved in both of these the artistic practice and the curatorial practice, and that not everybody wants to do the other practice. So we always say, like, let's share curatorial power with the artist, but maybe not every artist wants actually to do this the job of curation, because it's there's also a lot of parts of it that are
not that fun.
that are not so imaginative, but just the work to be done. And one thing that I don't remember what colleague it was who brought up. So I think we were all that I found really inspiring. I think we were all roughly from a younger generation of curators who were not in these positions for very long, and who came into these positions with ideas how to do things differently, how to make an impact on the wider scene and on your own festival, and then really being very aware how necessary it is to share our power and actually open that up and give our power also to more marginalized perspectives, but one person also said, who are the people who actually take this responsibility of sharing your power seriously and do it? Then this is a very specific, narrow a group of young, very political curators, whereas we see also curators of big old festivals who are not sharing anything. And so I also, to reflecting that, I also came to embrace a bit also the power that we hold, and to actually use it in the ways that we plan, and to actually make certain changes that we want to make before opening and sharing this power, which for sure is necessary, but not to give it away the second you actually get a hold of it.
Okay, thank you, Anna. You went naturally to my next question, but actually Amy answered a little about the first question, which I remind is about the majority of white in this collaboration and network. Maybe, I don't know if Claire, Angela, you want to add something about this before going to the power dynamic?
Yeah, I don't know. So I don't feel so that we weren't part of the curating process. But I would like to add something to the power discussion, because we also had a discussion amongst the artists about discovering our power. So it's not only, you know, for the festival leaders to think about sharing power, but also responsibility on the side of the artist to offer and first step to discover that you have actually power. There is power. There is nothing that we have to invent. It's there, but you have to own that space. It's complicated, and then, you know, to offer it also, because I feel that it's kind of a shameful. It can be a shameful situation when it comes to, you know, okay, we want to somehow do this, but how? Because there is not so much practice, so we have to learn a lot.
And just to say, I think going back to what you were saying, Anna, I think we're probably used to seeing, like, particularly men of like certain backgrounds really holding on to power, like getting in those roles and like staying there for a really long time. Sorry, I know that's a generalization, but also not sorry. And I guess, yeah, it's like a self-awareness, right? Like to examining that power dynamic, I think, is about a kind of constant self-awareness of yourself, the position that you hold, and it's also about desire for change and to kind of open up space for others beyond you. But I also, I guess, I think we spoke a lot about power dynamic in terms of the festivals, and in fact, within the festival cohort itself, there was a sort of implicit power dynamic as well, that you have certain structures that are pretty well funded, others that, you know, less so, just because, you know, people were running a festival didn't mean that they had a salary, for example. So I think that it was about a kind of self-awareness of power in relation to ourselves and others in the network, kind of within the festival cohort, but also in relation to the artists that we kind of made that invitation to come and join us.
Yeah, I think it's also one of the interesting characteristics of this network, that festivals there are not in a kind of competition of who will get this funding or this artist or this programmation, but for once it's like a network to rethink together how to be better, somehow. So yeah, which gives you, which brings us to the question of care, which the care is very present in your document and in your discussions, and also in your artistic work for Claire and Angela. And you talk a lot about care for the artists, care for the audience, for their specific needs and all. And I wanted to ask you a little bit more details that are present in the document, but maybe not everyone knows about. What are the kind of strategies of care that you thought about to implement, and also how do you do when it comes to care about your own team as a festival institution, or how do you get to care about your own team when you are an artist collaborating with assistants, producers? How does it work for you?
I also didn't do the visual description before, so I'm a white woman with long brown hair and a black top. And to answer your question, I mean, I think this discussion came a lot. I think it was very obvious where care is lacking and where there was effort. And I think something that was precious is that we also shared, and this is also in the document, this like good practices that we already encountered. So to not think that we start from zero and that nobody ever thought of care before, because a lot of people have been busy with this topic for a long time. A lot of people have investigated that. There's actually a lot of strategies out there. There's a lot of material already to be used and to be Googled. So I think this is also important to remember that we don't, we didn't just come up with this topic, and a lot of people have been busy with that for a while. I don't know, thinking about my own practice, like I've been busy with this idea of this doula practice, or like this kind of, like just this idea of like, what if there was somebody who's actually in charge of care work and that's their job? Because I feel like a lot of the time in my experience, it ends up being most possibly femme people in the team that do it at the end of the day because they're supposedly naturally good at it. And, of course, like, I mean, some artists that have maybe funding can afford to have producers or to have dramaturgs or to have people around that do care work, but none of it is actually officially part of their job description, which at the end of, or maybe then, I don't know, partners then have to do a lot of extra care. And so somehow, care doesn't magically disappear, it just gets redistributed. And at the moment what I'm busy researching is how it would change the way we work if there was somebody either coming from the institution or from the artistic team to really do the care work, and also what this means for different people. So this could be negotiating access, this could be doing warm-ups and cool-downs, this could be physiotherapy, because I think there's also all this maintenance that people, especially with body-based practices, like, it's like, you don't just come and do the show and leave, like you have to keep your body functioning, and then you also have to do all your networking and your Instagram, and you have to advertise your show and do your PR, and as much as festival structures sometimes help with that, I feel like a lot of the responsibility of the self-care and community care and group care always ends up being the job of the artist. And so I don't know, I'm just curious to see what it would be like if there was actually like a paid position. So that would really encapsulate all of this, and to really think about making this a priority. And something else, and then I will pass it on. Because me and Angela worked together last year, and we talked a lot about rest and taking care of ourselves, and we also realized that there was never any space, like physical spaces where to rest. And I think this is also something that's quite easy to implement, to actually have, rooms where people can actually take, and I think this sometimes it's also not rocket science, and I think there's a lot of stuff out there, but I will stop talking now. Maybe you want to say something?
Yes, I think I take it from there where we try to sleep in the theater, Claire and me, a year ago. And it's not only that there's no material space in this in the art field, but there is also somehow it's not easy to rest in a theater because of there is a lot of internalized guilt. The relationship between dancers and resting is not a very good one. So I thought it would be interesting to talk about how I have been invited to join this project. I have been contacted by the organizer of this one of the organizers from Goethe-Institut, with a very by email, and very friendly, very nice email introducing the project, and already explaining a lot about it. But it has been, I think, 2 weeks before the first online meeting would have been, or was actually performed. And so it has been in the end of September. I just rechecked it this morning, and then the residency would happen in the first week of November. So it was very short notice. And I have been really happy to be invited, and I love the project. I really wanted to take part, and I remember, reading this email and thinking, yeah, I want to do it, and then looking in the calendar and, oh, scheiße, I have to postpone this and shift this, and maybe then, and then, one day I can be here, and the next day I can shift there, and then I thought, okay, this is all a big lie. I can't do it. It's just not possible for me, but I want it, but it's just not. I could do it, or in terms of time organization, but it's this way of working is just not accessible for me. I identify myself as a crip artist. I have chronic illness, so I really have to take care of the way how I work. It's a big question. It's a big question for me. How can I work sick and stay healthy? And my reaction then to this email, I really had to think a lot about it, and I didn't know why. It's a competence to, that you have to find to react on this email, to not come across as, an arrogant artisan. Come on, to just, and also in the invitation, I could read about these topics of accountability and transparency, and this is why I thought, okay, come on, Angela, now, since they want to work around these topics, I'm going to try to, design a friendly email and to explain my situation, and to be very transparent, and but also take responsibility for my own access, and then the group had a talk, and then they decided to offer me a digital access. So it would be possible for me to take part without, traveling to France, and then I could do it. And this has been, for me, the most precious, actually, experience in this whole, because, talking about things, talking about access, sustainability, transparency, power, structures is one thing, but actually it's in these practices, in these practical things, getting invited, and then there is a power relation. I mean, getting an email by Goethe-Institut, sitting at home as a freelance artist in Berlin, reading this email, there is a power relation installed in this situation. So, and all the way how this worked has been very, how do you say, I felt welcome, and this has been very important for me to go into the discussions and to feel a little bit more encouraged also to raise my voice. Yeah.
I guess, thanks for sharing that. And we've talked about this a bit, but I feel like it's important to acknowledge as well that, as I said earlier, the festivals, we wanted to allow more space for ourselves to have the discussions on a timescale that felt more accessible for us, but then, inadvertently, like that decision then had a knock-on effect on the artists that we invited in. And I think fundamentally that invitation wasn't accessible, you know, because you weren't able to participate. I mean, you could, but, you know, it would have been fantastic if everybody had access in the same way. And I think one thing we've been reflecting on quite a bit is like just the different structures of hierarchy within kind of culture making, and that we might have a desire to embed care and accessibility, but then you often come up against those wider structures. So in this instance, it was the timescales of the funding that we needed to kind of have things neatly wrapped up by a certain point, and, you know, a report submitted when actually we probably needed another year for this project. So I guess it's like how do the conversations or the learning that we've done, you know, hopefully influence kind of wider practice and those wider structures that often aren't in the room. You know, what if next time the funders were in the room with us as well, having that conversation too, and well, I guess they were with the Goethe-Institut, but sort of felt more like you became part of the project, sort of with us. But yeah, maybe a different version of this is also about artists, festival directors, funders, us all kind of coming up with those what ifs sort of in dialogue, in a wider dialogue.
Anna, you said about the team care, you said like some reflex are into your festival. Like,
I just wanted to link in with you, Amy. Also, when we think about the structures, there's also the structure of the festival that we struggled with in a very productive way, I think, but also in ways where we had to acknowledge that with the festival structure, certain limitations come. For if you're thinking about sustainability, if you're thinking about practices of care, because a festival, like the idea of the festival, is usually that things happen in a very condensed period of time, which by nature is just very stressful for everybody involved. And you made some experiments with also extending the festival. Maybe, do you want to?
Yeah, I will. Because I guess we were talking a lot about care, and I feel like care, in a way, it has become a buzzword in the same way that sustainability has. And I think what was useful about this project is we came up with like really practical ways of, okay, this is how you can be more caring. You know, it's not like any of us get up in the morning and go to work and think, I'm going to be really uncaring today. You know, like we're pretty most people I know in the art world are, you know, pretty caring people, but you're often working within structures or within contexts that are inherently inaccessible. And so it's, what are those really practical solutions to embrace, greater accessibility, greater level of care? How does that really become embedded? And I think part of that is being honest about when you do get it wrong, or you know, when something hasn't quite worked. So we did an extended festival as a sort of it was a kind of pandemic motivated model. It was the only way we could have done a festival at that particular point in the pandemic, because of a number of different just reasons beyond our control, to do with funding, as well as just the risks of us making the festival at that time. And I think we got feedback from audiences and from artists that structure really worked for them, that gave them more space, that they felt like at times they maybe had more support. I think particularly with international artists coming in who might drop into a festival, they're lucky if they see one show and they're kind of hosted a bit, but not really, because everyone sort of rushed off their feet. And I definitely got to have some much more kind of meaningful interactions with international artists coming to the city. But it was really demanding for our team to be across 6 months on a kind of constant delivery cycle, and all of the processes that you know and understand when you're putting a festival together just go out of the window, and every project has its own time scale. I mean, it was much more, it reminded me much more of used to work in a venue, a producing theatre in the UK, and it reminded me much more of that context, but also without the infrastructure that you might have in a venue. And it was, you know, although that model might have been more caring for our audience, who could maybe indulge in a couple of shows and then have a break and get on with their lives and then come to the next show, rather than, you know, suddenly there's no contemporary performance in Leeds for 2 years and you need to see everything in one weekend. So we had a lot of great feedback from the audiences, but you know, in turn, I think the team were really kind of up against it, and there was a real kind of risk of burnout sort of at various points. So yeah, often what is accessible for one group might not be for another. So it's about all those different considerations, I guess. But you've been trying some new approaches, right? In your team,
we do a lot in terms of accessibility in the festival, but like one aspect that I'm really struggling with and don't have a solution yet is really to build a crib time schedule. So a schedule that would allow for a different kind of time that is not the normative time, which in the end would mean to either have less works or stretch it longer. And I don't have a solution for this yet also. I think it's something that is an ongoing discussion in the team, but we have not yet come to we can build a crib time in certain aspects. We have also with the Goethe-Institut, we have a project in this year's festival, which is the Gathering in a Better World, that is really curated and hosted by 3 disabled artists, and there's going to be it runs over a longer period of time during the day, with lots of resting time and so on. But for the all over festival, I don't have a solution yet. But you were starting to talk about the team and team burnout and how to care for the team, because I think when we think about care, we think of audience, we think of artists, and often forget ourselves and our structures. I'm really happy to take over this festival from Martine Dennewald, who together with her team already built structures of awareness, which we have since then kept on practicing and are also enlarging. So there's a monthly awareness meeting for the team to discuss things that are going on the interpersonal level, might be in relation to discrimination or other sensitive topics. And we installed a person, an external contact person for awareness. First, she started as the contact person for cases of discrimination, but after 1 year and evaluation, we noticed that there is actually more needed, not just when cases, when then things that happen become already a case, like a Vorfall, but already to talk about things on a level that has not yet become a conflict or something. And this for me is a level of care that I can see how that really supports the team, because they can talk to somebody outside, because we are a very small team. We are 5 people in the core team, and then for the festival we grow to 30, 35 people. And it's not easy to introduce everybody, because some people are only there for 3 weeks, for example, in the festival, but we make sure that everybody knows about this and meets this person. And I can really, and this actually, and so, and if there are things that should be addressed to either me as the artistic director or to the managing director, we hear from her and then can take things up and change certain structures. Sometimes it's just small things or things to actually have another conversation about in the team. And I can really, this is really supporting me also in my role of leading this team.
Okay, so we have 25 minutes left. We managed to talk for an hour.
Wow.
We were so yeah. Maybe we'll quickly go to the next questions in order to let you ask your questions after. So the last question is about your next steps. What are you thinking to do after with this network? And also at the end of your document, there is like this dream festival that you imagined. And yeah, Claire was nominated
She didn't
democratically to read some pieces of this dream festival. So yeah, Claire. You should do this now, yeah. This is your duty.
I just highlighted some extracts, also because some of it is in Spanish, which I don't speak. The Dream Festival. I was invited by my friend to this new festival, a hybrid, located around an oasis, in between forests, rivers, beaches, and out at sea, around open fires, alongside rocky, cavernous spaces, in a theater, a hotel, a restaurant, a daycare center, a festival in which the digital truly serves the human experience. It's a festival of patience, patient discovery of how to be together, how to interrelate, how to communicate. There are 34 hours in the day of this festival. You know everybody and nobody. It's full of traps, jokes, frauds, and lies. You feel like you're part of a community. Perhaps watching choreography performed by dancers and then choreography performed by insects. There are planned pathways, there is room to maneuver, dark clubs huddled around a fire, space to be alone with thoughts but still connected. Long story short, no one really knows what is the art and what is not the art. Translators are present, nothing happens only once, there are no more than 3 things in a day. There is delicious food. The festival leaves you feeling nourished and not exhausted. There are nap stations, and in sleep the festival continues in dream. And
so will we have the chance to see this festival? And what are your next steps to go to this festival?
I mean,
no, just not your next steps.
I'm suddenly like maybe the next step should be that we all make that festival together. But yeah, I think we're not really sure right now sort of what is next, but I think there's definitely a desire for there to be a next and to continue this kind of conversation in one way or another. So this is hopefully just the start, I guess.
And maybe just something to add, like I think it's also really important, especially when there is sometimes these documents that then really feels like this kind of final point and okay, this is it, we solved it, and now we can like tap ourselves on the shoulder and be like, oh yeah, great, tick, 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 and now we can move on and go back to normal, you know, whatever that is and for whom. And I think it's just good to also for us to be reminded that this is just a starting point, and then to actually implement this type of changes requires such like deep, boring, painful work that is not, you know, like this is very nice and I love this like dreamy part of it, but of course this usually has this very unsexy underlayer of really fighting for you know, bureaucratic changes and for working conditions so that everyone who would wish to be in the room could be there. And yes, so I hope that this is just a starting point and not that it feels like already finishing.
Yeah, like last night, I read the paper after a while, and it reminded me of a lot of things that felt, oh, I don't know, at the time, kind of, oh, we should try that, we should do that, and then being sort of back in the delivery cycle, you can lose sight of those things, just in terms of not having the time or the space to think outside of that kind of context of delivery. So it would be amazing if a next iteration allowed, I guess, more physical time together, because there was the residency at PAF, but only, you know, some people could go, and it would be great to spend time together kind of in person, but also maybe to kind of practically sort of beta test some of those ideas and solutions to try some stuff out, but in dialogue and kind of in, you know, with a support network around you as you navigate some of those new ways of working?
Yeah, I think it would be quite important to have a next step from here, whatever it is. But of course, I mean, we would all love to meet and work together, but there is no structure for the moment, so it's very hard. Also, to be honest, it's not, I mean, everybody wants it. You spend time with an amazing group. Work is really good. I'm super proud of this document. Maddie has done an amazing job. Also, this is very, very precious. I think that we came out with a document like this. It's not, you know, I'm missing the English word there, but yeah, I really think we did a good job there. But also, I mean, how to sustain our work together and not, you know, waste it. Let it just, you know, be a project that, you know, we developed some nice instruments, but then we never come back together and give us feedback, or we never, you know, talk about how to actually find ways to install these instruments that we developed. So yeah, that's it.
Thanks a lot. I think you deserve an applause now. And yeah, I will give you the chance to ask some questions. Yes.
You just said that, you know, after... Sorry. Thank you. You said that after working on a document like this, you know, going back to normal. My question is, can you really go back to normal after imagining something like this?
I mean, I think probably not, or like I hope not, otherwise we would spend so much time thinking of something and then be like, oh yeah, that was nice. But in my experience, I don't know, like last year I had the chance to be in this residency in Cadreil for 8 months, and this was so luxurious to have this much time to work and to be paid monthly, which has never happened to me in my entire life. You know, and then suddenly I had all this time to think about all these questions of care and timing and how I want to work, and which was great. But now, you know, it's over, and I have to go back to this classic funding format that I have to apply it for an 8 weeks long production, which is what I can afford to do if I want to pay people fairly. And so like that's why now I'm busy with trying to find other forms of funding or like other ways of working that support a different rhythm and support a different like different organization and constellations of people. But then there's always this confrontation or this clash with the structures in which we work, which are usually really rigid. And again, I feel like a lot of the responsibility of softening or melting these structures always end up being on the artists, and that we have, like, you know, we are given some kind of frame, and then within that you have to try to pull some trick out of your self to make it somewhat sustainable and caring and all these buzzwords. So this is my big question at the moment of like how to continue producing in a way that doesn't feel self-exploiting or exploiting of the team. And unfortunately, it's like because we're so limited with it's like either you do research and then you go into academia, which is a whole other world of questions. Yeah, so I mean, I have this wish that also then it can open other things. And I think there is also things that can be done that are quite simple. And it's not that, like, I think there's also like small resistance that can make a big difference. And I don't think, like, sometimes I feel hopeless and I want to just get a different job. But then I remember there's like little changes that can make a big impact. But of course, it's, you know, there's always this in between my wishes and desires and all this dreaminess and then the actual reality and the reality of also freelancing, that sometimes you just have to do jobs because you have to pay your rent, and you know, and it's yeah, I don't know if someone else has thoughts.
I just wanted to add, so I'm from the Goethe-Institut, and I wanted to share, it's a very beautiful moment for me also, because it's like a moment of reflection. Unfortunately, Francis is not here. But what I wanted to mirror also to, or like bring into the room, the progress already had a big influence. So also we consciously decided that we would not, which the Goethe often doesn't do, but we would not be funders in the room, but really participate in the progress and also take the time. For example, also with Amy, Francis and I, when we were in very stressful situations, sometimes also we were very conscious and mirrored this to us, and were far more aware and caring throughout the process. Also internally, Francis and I also literally had moments when we said this project needs more time, and so we cancelled others consciously. And I'm mentioning the last point not to brag, but really to mirror, give this also to credit to the festival, that within the UNIC structure, as Amy has mentioned, it was also a time of rethinking what these UNIC networks can stand for. And we pushed also for more time, and we pushed for different ways of working within the network. And I recently came back from one of these meetings, and UNIC Global said to us, this is how UNIC should work in the future. And so it was really, it's a special moment for all of those who participated, that it's not only dreaming, but that I think there is small elements of change also within institutions that are already happening. And I think it's really important. It's not totally abstract. Maybe this beautiful festival you describe still is, but it feels important to credit those little moments also.
Definitely, and I guess, yeah, like huge thank you to you guys, because I feel like there was such a conscious shift and a desire from the Goethe-Institut. It felt like we were humans working together as opposed to funders and art sector. And I think, yeah, if this project could do anything in this moment, like hopefully we can influence, like, yeah, just wider practice and what that power dynamic looks like between funders and the kind of the sector. So it feels in some ways like we already, like there's so many triumphs already, but definitely agree that this is sort of hopefully only the beginning for the network.
Is there any other question? It's always this time where everybody is thinking, do I have a question?
Or for anyone online, I don't know how that works, whether we can...
Is this like a Facebook Live?
If there's
where you
anyone
can, like,
online, are you out there?
That's the big question, actually.
Maybe in the meantime, if no one, like, because I agree with you, and I think there's also some changes, and I know that, like, for example, now in Tanzfabrik, they're on pause for 1 month, and of course it's really hard to negotiate that and how that works, but I think there's also institutions that are really trying, you know, new ways of working, and this is really exciting to see that this also starts to spread and merge into other layers. And I think, you know, suddenly, I mean, with COVID, there was all this funding to support artists to just exist, and I mean, this was quite shocking, or at least in Vienna, in the context where I work, like suddenly, you know, it was like not so much money, but it was monthly, and suddenly everybody felt that we had such a luxurious lifestyle. And, you know, so I think there is, like, it just showed that there is some possibilities and there's things that can change. And, like, I don't want to be just completely negative, like, and I think it's exciting to see that it's starting to move not just from, like, this kind of individual research, but also into structures, but also because we don't have a choice, because it's obvious that this is not really working in a sustainable, long-term kind of way. So when I see these examples, I get also excited.
Yes.
Thanks. I have a question that maybe refers also to what you just said. You said you cancelled other projects to give this one more time. I guess those were also important projects, maybe? And
yeah, I feel really bad now.
I don't know. When you say as a festival, you know, you want to give your team and the artists more time, you always have to decide what you can't do instead, right? And that also takes away the opportunity to work for artists, for example, in certain cases. So I wonder how to navigate that.
Yeah, it is a complex one though, because it's true. I think throughout the pandemic, I was in a lot of conversations where we were talking about doing less better, and actually, so many of the examples kind of in that document or that we discussed are so much more possible when you're maybe not working with 100 artists, but you're working, I don't know, half the amount or something, or you do half the number of projects. But it's, yeah, I mean, there's challenges with either direction, because like maybe less people get the opportunity, but those that do receive that opportunity in a more meaningful way and have an experience that's more supportive and accessible. And it's I mean, particularly in the UK context at the moment, with a lot of pressures around funding and Brexit, and I think that's how we probably need to work, is finding a way to do less better.
No, thank you for this question. I was not laughing because I think it's a ridiculous question, but it's somehow a question of my life right now. So, yeah, I think it's for everybody. I mean, it's super hard to find a balance and to decide, and to, you know, because you always have this pressure, and I don't know. I have to think a lot about the difference between resilience and immunity, and like a resilient structure, what does this actually mean? And it would already be, I mean, we don't need, you know, super accessible places for everybody, but a resilient structure would be a structure that, you know, allows to be touched, allows to be deformed in order to get back to its original shape, you know. And this is just, I mean, it's maybe, I hope you can get the picture, but, you know, being immune would mean, you know, not allowing to be touched, and not allowing to have conversations, to have communications, and to, you know, to solve problems, because there is always problems, because we are not, you know, we all want to live in a diverse future, so there is not a non-normative team we are working with, and we need to have space for communication and to listen to each other. And I think that's one of the most important deconstruction hacks. Yeah.
Thank you. I think you had a question too.
I seem to have forgotten it. This is the aftermath of COVID. Sorry if I forget very easily.
It's fine.
No, I just basically wanted to mention the South Asian context, because you are talking about a very different context here, and the contexts are very different in South Asia. Yeah. First of all, there are such less female-led festivals, number one. Talking about care is really far off at the moment. I mean, I'm also from Goethe-Institut. I work in New Delhi. We're trying to bring this conversation. We are trying to talk about inclusiveness. We are trying to talk about care, especially about after COVID. You know, it is after pandemic. It is everyone is so exhausted. I mean, the moment you come out, you start doing something, exhaustion just catches on with everyone. So the aspect of care has become really important, but the lack of funding structures, the lack of supportive structures, the lack of structures from the government actually makes it very hard to talk about certain aspects. Also, the way our you know, even buildings are made, or we don't think about anything. I mean, there's only one form of human that one thinks of, and also with the right-wing government in India right now, it's extremely difficult to negotiate structures. So yeah, I mean, I think we are very far from what you're talking, but it's very inspiring to listen to something like this. Thank you.
Yeah, same for me. In Tunisia, it's kind of far, even though there is like some feminist initiatives and queer also concerning festivals that took in consideration a lot care, but it's also very inspiring for me to take some tips from what's happening here. So.
And I guess just to say with the female-led thing, I mean, I was in other festival kind of groups, meetings during the pandemic where as a female festival leader, I was definitely the minority in the room. So yeah, it's not like in the UK context. I mean, most of the sort of regularly funded kind of long-standing festivals are still male-led. So I think that was one thing that was really refreshing about this process, is to be surrounded by the kind of female presence and people that are kind of concerned with similar issues and similar ideas.
Maybe there's also a lot of people that don't identify as female and that are also very busy with those issues. Like,
exactly.
I think it's also important to mention.
And there was male representation in the group as well. That's kind of important to say.
Maybe the last question, if there is one. Or if not. Okay, so thanks a lot. It was really, really interesting. And yeah, the festival continues. And thank you again for your work.